I've never been much of an art guy, never had a creative bone in my body. Growing up, I always leaned more toward practical stuff like buildings, and I could never really understand how people got lost in colors and shapes on a canvas or the pose of someone in a photo. My best friend Jace, though, he was different. Even if he never called himself an artist, he had an eye for things, little things most people could easily miss at first glance. If something caught his attention, he would zone in on it longer than most. He definitely saw the world a little differently than most. But what we found in that building, I still don't know what it is. Whatever it was, it took hold of Jace in a way that made him different, like a spell gone wrong. And I need to warn you, do not approach him if you see him. I don't care what you see or hear. If you see him, run. Not long ago, we were getting ready to launch a YouTube channel, J&J Explores, short for James and Jace Explores. The plan was to dive into urban exploration, share our finds, maybe build a community with a hobby we had for some time now. We'd both been into the hobby since high school, sneaking into abandoned buildings, checking out what was inside and dodging the occasional security guard. It was risky, but it was something we did for fun, and we learned a lot about places we explored. Jace was pumped. He kept coming up with new gear ideas like dual camera setups, head mounts, drone shots. We were still saving up for a decent camera at the time, and using our phones for scouting runs in the meantime. Every weekend we'd hit up a new spot. Sometimes it was a place we found through word of mouth. Sometimes just something that caught our eye during a drive. We would map them out and figure out whether we could get in clean or if we'd have to bend the rules a bit just to get in. And yeah, urban exploring isn't exactly legal. We knew that a long time ago. But as long as we didn't get caught, didn't damage anything, and didn't share the address, we figured we weren't hurting anyone. That weekend we picked a spot I'd never even heard of before. An old building with no logo or names written on it. There was not a single clue of what this place was, and our minds raced to think of what could be inside. The place looked in pretty bad condition. The bright brick walls started to show signs of decay, with little pieces flaking off if you touched them. All of the fences around it were in a terrible state, and every single window was nailed tightly shut, except for one. One of the back windows had boards that were not entirely nailed in anymore, allowing us to pull it open just wide enough to slip inside. We were greeted with a slight mold smell, with a touch of rust in the air from the large machines that we guessed were too big to really get out of the building at time. Rust claiming them now. It was a bust for the most part. Just empty rooms, decaying drywall, warped floors, the occasional forgotten chair here and there. Some office stuff still lingered, but it was so far gone, so eaten away by time that it was impossible to tell what any of it was supposed to be. Papers were nothing more than clumps of pulp fused to the floor. The air felt stale and sticky, like it hadn't moved in decades. We were just about ready to call it a day when Jace wandered off to the side, said he was going to check out one of the far-end rooms of the building he thought was used for storage or maybe shipping. It looked more intact than the rest, but somehow even more lifeless. That's when I heard him. "James!" he shouted out to me. "Come check this out." It took me a while to find him. He had slipped into a small room tucked into one of the farthest corners of the building, almost like it was trying to stay hidden in a weird way. It was different from the others, much smaller and pitch black from the lack of windows installed in there. It had no signs of ever having lights in there as well, which made it a touch more creepy. "What did you find?" I remember asking, stepping in with a beam of light my headlamp made, cutting through the darkness. I don't know, actually," Jay said, his voice low and weirdly unsteady. He was pointing at the far wall. "I can't really look at it without it hurting my eyes." That threw me off a little as I turned to look where he was pointing at, my head-mounted light turning to match his direction before I could finally see it. A single Polaroid photo stuck to the wall like it had always been there. Even from a distance, something about it felt wrong as I looked towards it. I stepped closer and tried to focus on it, but the second my eyes landed on the photo, They slid away like I physically wasn't allowed to look directly at it somehow. It wasn't just blurry or unclear. It was like my brain refused to let me see it. "What the hell is that?" I muttered. "It's doing it to you too, right?" Jace asked. I nodded slowly, not taking my eyes off the wall, even though I couldn't really look at the photo itself. "I can't even tell what's on it," he said, "but I can't stop trying to look at it." He was right. I couldn't see what the image was. Every time I got close to focusing on it, my eyes would twitch away, snapping to the corner or even the wall behind it most of the time. The longer I stood there, the more I needed to see it. I didn't want to look at it. I needed to. Like the mystery was burrowing into my mind and planting itself deep. I must have looked like I was in a trance, eyes darting, blinking and straining. Every time I thought I had it, I didn't. And then everything went black. My flashlight died. The head-mounted flashlight I had on was fully charged when we left. For it to turn off like that either meant the battery was faulty or it drained itself and died from being on for so long. I was glad, though, the only thing I could see was darkness now, my eyes not locked on to whatever we were looking at before. And Jace? He didn't say a word. He just stood there, still lost in a trance like I was, not too long ago. The back of my skull throbbed like I'd just been hit, and my eyes burned as I rubbed them. Tears had welled up without me even noticing. For a moment, everything was going back and forth from clear and blurry, like I'd just woken from some awful dream. I blinked hard, trying to refocus, and fumbled for my phone. It was midnight. We'd been in that room for hours. My legs felt like concrete, sore and trembling. My back ached from standing still for so long that I thought I wasn't going to be able to walk away. I turned on my phone's flashlight and aimed it at Jace. He was rubbing his eyes too, his face pale and his eyes bloodshot just a little, like he'd just come up for air after being nearly drowned. Even Jace could tell the time as we stood there, seeing it was pitch black inside the building. "Were we standing here the whole time?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "I think so." Something inside me told me to look back at the wall, to shine my phone's light on that Polaroid one more time. I could feel the pull again, subtle but sharp like a hook in the back of my mind. I shook it off instead, clenching the light in my hand and pointing it toward the doorway instead to lead the way out. "Come on," I remember telling him, keeping my eyes off the wall. "Let's get out of here. Leave whatever that thing is. I'll ask around later, see if anyone's ever heard of anything like this. Last thing we need is to bring it home with us after that." "Yeah," Jace muttered, still glancing back toward the wall but not quite brave enough to look. "Yeah, that's probably a good idea. Let's get something to eat. I feel so goddamn hungry right now." And we did. We hit up a local burger joint on the way back. We both ate like we hadn't eaten in days. I tore through 2 burgers, fries, and a shake, more than I usually ate in one sitting. It was like trying to see that single Polaroid had drained something out of us. But how? It was just a photo. We couldn't even see what was on it. And yet it had done something to us. Jace, on the other hand, he was quiet. He picked at his food at first, barely eating anything. He mostly just stared off into the distance like he was watching something far away that was out of my sight. I chucked a fry at his forehead. "Hey, you good?" "Oh yeah, just thinking." "Thinking about what?" He went quiet again, still looking past me like he was trying to remember something just out of reach. "What do you think is on that Polaroid?" I should have taken that question more seriously, considering the events leading up to what happened to him. Instead, I joked. "Probably a picture of your mom," I said with a grin. "So bad you don't want to look at it, but she's such a wreck you kind of have to just believe it." "Dude, what the fuck?" he replied, laughing, but clearly disgusted. Over the next week, I reached out to some local urban explorer groups, online forums, Discord chats, even a few people we'd met in the past. I was hoping someone might know something about the building, or better yet, about the Polaroid hidden inside of it. Not a single one had any real information. Most didn't even know the building existed. One guy, someone I didn't really know, said he went to check the place in the middle of that week. He snuck in the same way we did after I mentioned it to the group chat he was in. When he got back, he told me he couldn't even find the room we were talking about. He searched the whole building, said he found the main floor, the busted offices, even the old loading area. But the small windowless room where we'd found the Polaroid? Not a thing. I wanted to believe he just missed it, got turned around and just didn't see it, but the building wasn't a maze or anything. It was a pretty empty building. Deep down, I wasn't sure. It was the weekend again, and somehow Jace had convinced me to go back. He claimed the building had a basement, and said there used to be an access point somewhere near the loading docks. Looking back, I honestly think he made that up. But at the time, it worked on me. Curiosity and concern outweighed my better judgment, and once again we found ourselves heading back to that damn place. We snuck in the same way we had before, pulling the loose boards away from the window and slipping inside just like last time. The glass crunched softly beneath our feet as we stepped into the silence. The air was stale, thick with that same metallic mustiness and mold as before. Nothing had changed. The place was still bare, lifeless, and empty as before. Nothing new caught our attention. If there was a basement, it was hidden very well. We wandered around for nearly an hour, checking every hallway, closet, and broken door frame. And then, he was gone. "Jace?" I called out, my voice echoing through the decayed corridors, but got no answer back. "Jace!" I yelled louder this time, spinning in circles and checking behind every wall and broken panel. Deep down, I think I already knew where he was. I must have known because the last place I checked, the very last place, was that room. And there he was, standing dead still. His headlamp was on it, casting a pale and narrow beam directly onto the Polaroid, which was still stuck to the wall in the exact same spot. He didn't move. He didn't blink. He just stared at it. I hesitated at the doorway when I noticed something I hadn't seen before. The dust in the room wasn't just lying around like it should have been. It had patterns. Long, faint streaks coiled across the walls and ceiling, forming a loose spiral that centered around the Polaroid. It wasn't obvious at first. It was too fine, too subtle for either of us to even notice when we first came here. But once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. "Jace," I said firmly, stepping into the room towards him. He didn't respond. I moved up behind him, placing one hand on his shoulder and reaching out with the other to cover the Polaroid from my view with the palm of my hand as it stuck there on the wall in the distance. "Hey, we should," he snapped suddenly. Jace turned with such speed and force that he knocked me backward. I hit the floor hard, my flashlight slipping off of my head and onto the ground beside me. I looked up stunned as he loomed over me, his face red and his eyes bloodshot, locked on me with a look I'd never seen before. Not in Jace, not in anyone. "Back off!" he shouted, his voice raw from pure anger. Then it was gone. The fury he had, the tension in his shoulders, it all evaporated in an instant. His expression softened, confused and almost dazed, like he didn't know how he'd ended up standing over me. "I'm sorry," he muttered, reaching down to help me up. "I don't know what that was." "Jesus, Jace," I told him, taking his hand and standing shakily. "You scared the hell out of me." "Yeah, sorry, I don't know what came over me, I just wanted to..." His voice trailed off again, as his gaze drifted back toward the Polaroid, his eyes locked in on it again, unblinking like before. I saw the obsession crawling back in. Before he could fully fall into it, I reached up and flicked off his headlamp, hiding it from his view in the darkness. Having him look back at me showed I broke whatever spell was put on him at that moment. "Let's go," I said. "Whatever that thing is, it's messing with you more than me. We're done here." I gave his arm a gentle tug. He didn't move at first. His body stayed locked in place, his weight heavy like something was holding him there. But then slowly, he gave in. He started to follow me. We didn't speak another word as we left. We just got the hell out of there. The drive home was sickening quiet the entire time. Jace kept staring out the window, his face blank, eyes distant. Even as we turned corners and left the building farther behind, his head stayed turned in the same direction. It was like he could still see it somehow, still feel it, like some invisible thread was tugging at him from miles away even now. "Jace?" I asked after a while, trying to pull him back. He blinked and looked at me like I'd just interrupted him daydreaming. "Next weekend," I said. "Let's just hang out. Let's just chill out, watch a movie or something. No exploring for a little while, all right?" "Yeah," he said softly. "Yeah, I wouldn't mind that." We grabbed some food before I dropped Jace off at his place, a small, worn-down house he rented about an hour drive from the building we kept returning to. As he got out of the car, I could see him pause after every few steps. He'd walk forward, stop, stared off into the distance. Then another few steps, stop, look. It was like something was tugging at him, pulling his attention again and again towards something far away that I couldn't see at all, but I knew what it was. I just had that feeling. Eventually, he made it to his front door. He didn't look back. He just stepped inside and shut it behind him. I waited. I sat in my car across the street for over an hour just watching. He didn't appear in the windows. No flicker of lights, no movement, nothing. It was like the house swallowed him whole the moment he stepped inside. Yet I felt his eyes looking across the city, looking in that same direction he had been looking the entire time we left. That week, I dove deeper into research. I scoured forums, archives, local databases, anything that might have some scrap of information about that building. But there was nothing. No old records, no mention of workers, managers, or previous owners. No news articles, no accidents, no permits, not even ghost stories in the local area it rested. There was nothing. My sleep schedule was wrecked as I stayed up every night clicking through broken links and dead-end blog posts, chasing something I wasn't even sure what I was chasing anymore. And then the worst happened. I was heading to Jace's place when I saw it immediately, his front door wide open. My stomach dropped. I slammed on the brakes and parked in front of the house, heart pounding to see his front door just open like that. The door was left wide open like he had walked out and never thought to close it behind him. When I stepped inside, the first thing I noticed was the smell, sour like rotting food and something worse beneath it. There on the kitchen counter was the same food we'd eaten the night I dropped him off, now bloated, congealed, and crawling with flies. But Jace, he was gone. I think I would have rather found him dead on the floor than think of where he was right now, and there was only one place in the world he could be. I jumped back into my car and sped toward the building. I didn't care about the speed limit. I didn't care about getting pulled over. My only thought was reaching Jace. Only God knew how long he had been there now, maybe all week after I dropped him off. When I got there, I barely threw the car into park before I was sprinting to the same boarded-up window we had used multiple times now, pulling back the boards and nearly falling inside the building. "Jace!" I shouted, my voice echoing through the dead halls with panic starting to spill out of me. The closer I got to that room, the heavier my chest felt. I was praying he wouldn't be there, praying that when I got there, he wasn't there at all. But he was there. He stood exactly where he had before, motionless, barely breathing at all. He wore the same clothes as last weekend. His arms hung stiff at his sides and his head tilted ever so slightly toward the Polaroid still stuck to the wall. Whatever that image was trapped on that Polaroid, it sung to him to return, and return his sights on it the best he could. I hadn't brought my flashlight, so I used the one on my phone. The beam cut through the darkness, catching the back of him. He looked like a husk from where I stood. His clothes were filthy, caked in dust and streaked with dirt. Dried blood stained the sleeves and knees, as if he'd fallen or crawled his way back in. His body looked thin like he hadn't touched food all week. Maybe he didn't now, looking back at it. His arms were like branches, bones clearly defined under loose, pale skin with clumps of hair on his head clearly missing, revealing raw scalp that looked rough and almost bloody. And the smell, It hit me like a wall when I got closer to him. Not just body odor or rot, there was something metallic underneath, like rust and decay, like iron, like blood. I stepped closer, stomach churning more and more as I got closer to him. His skin had a strange sheen, like sweat but thicker, slick and unnatural, almost wet looking, but not in a way that made sense, like whatever was inside him was leaking out. And then I saw his hands. His fingers were bony and trembling, but they were coated in dried blood, not just cuts or scrapes. Under his fingernails, shreds of skin clung like he'd clawed something or someone to pieces. There was no sign of wounds on his own hands. That skin had come from somewhere else. Jace? Nothing. Not a twitch, not even the slightest shift in his posture. Jace, are you okay? Still no response. I stepped closer, my voice a little more urgent now, a little more afraid of what he may have done. I reached out, my fingers brushing against his shoulder, hoping that maybe, just maybe, I could snap him out of whatever trance he was in like I had before. But it was like watching the same nightmare play out on a darker loop, as he spun around so fast it made the world blur, his hands latching onto me with terrifying strength. In the blink of an eye, he slammed me to the ground and pinned me there, his weight pressing down hard on my chest. His face hovered inches from mine, and in that moment, everything about him was wrong. Wrong in how strong he was. Wrong in the anger and rage he was putting out towards me. "Get away from it!" he roared, spit flying from his cracked lips. "It's mine to see!" His voice didn't sound like his own anymore. It was layered, like something else inside him was speaking through him. Like his voice had shifted and rotted a little into something else, something primal. It was only then I finally saw what he had done, or what had happened to him. The skin around his eyes, even his eyelids were torn roughly off. A constant stare with no way to blink or close now. But that wasn't even the worst part. He had started breaking and pulling small pieces of the bone and muscle around his eye socket out, making more space to the horror I can get out of my head even as I write this. Eyes. So many eyes in each eye socket of his head. You could clearly see his normal eyes in the middle of them, all like spotting a different colored ball in a pile of yellow balls. But he must have had 10, maybe 20 new eyes in each socket, and they were fighting with each other, moving and pushing at each other, shifting inside his skull, staring at me. I can see it. I can see it. He yelled at me before shifting his sights back to the wall, seeing his eyes still pushing against each other like they were fighting for dominance. Yet they all went in different directions, trying to look at whatever was on the Polaroid still. Finally, he let out a scream, an inhuman sound that I didn't think was possible to make as he ran at the wall, yanking the Polaroid off and just ran to one of the sealed windows, bashing through it with all of his might and falling to the ground once outside. There was blood and skin everywhere around the window and even where he landed, his skin giving way to hitting the boarded window and dragging himself up but running out of sight with speeds I still couldn't believe still. I haven't seen him since, and he still has that Polaroid with him. If that thing did that to him after a week, I can't imagine what it's turning him into if he keeps looking at it more and more. It made my best friend into a monster. I'm doing my best to try and find him, but if you see something out there and you're not able to look at it properly, leave it alone and get away from it. Don't even touch it. I don't want the same thing happening to you like what it did to Jace. I haven't seen Jace since then, and he still has the Polaroid with him. If that thing could twist him into whatever he is now in just a week, I can't imagine what he's turning into now. Every day that passes, I wonder if he's even human anymore, or if the Polaroid has completely consumed him. It didn't just take over his mind. It reshaped his body and soul. It made my best friend into something else. Something monstrous. I'm gonna try and find him. I don't know what I'll be able to do if I do find him, but if you see him before I do and he still has that Polaroid with him, just run and don't look at it.